Hi, and welcome to the Intellectual Adventure Podcast. Today, a few of the members here bring a show of exciting adventures to you, the viewer. We're joined by Red, Carl, Outcast, and Chad, and myself, as we get into the show today. I want to address the pause and the hiatus of the show before we get started. Now, we want to get into a new kind of show format using an adventure map in this season of starting things back up. Now, our adventure map is posted on the website for you to check out in both a digital and text form to follow along with steps in the show and kind of understand where this show's direction is going as far as its balance between the audience interactions and the core interactions to just submit something that we can break down as a group and have fun discussing over. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to this new relaunch of the Intellectual Adventure Podcast and introduce some of our members to you today. Now, we're going to go ahead and start with Carl. Carl, do you have anything you'd like to tell us about what brings you together to want to do podcasting?
I want to do podcasts to just share my point of view, help in any way I can, but just to be a voice for like spiritual reasons, but also awake reasons. And that's about it.
Now, Chad, is there anything that you'd like to tell us about what got you involved with getting into podcasting?
Well, I've been on kind of a bad track of isolation, but I feel like I have a lot of good ideas and a lot of good thoughts on things, and I want to put myself out there and discuss and share content and ideas with people and do it in a format where I can sort of feel like I'm putting myself out there more. And I want to do this with you guys. You know, I'm really excited to get to know you and to discuss things.
I think there's a lot of excitement to be had with a project like this. Anytime that you're asking people to take time out of their day should be for something of a good purpose or in good spirit, because time is definitely our biggest asset, and podcasting is a hard project if you're not prepared to spend time with it. I've seen that multiple times with people struggling to get a show going because they don't understand how hard it is to make that audio sound good or get that flow right or fill that time. So I'm excited personally with the direction of a group podcast that has art added to it. That's something that I'm excited with, and I think it will be a good change of shift from the more one-on-one small group atmosphere I've been doing. Outcast, would you like to add anything?
I'd like to do podcasting just as something to do, meet new people, and maybe help some people along the way, like Carl said.
Yeah, Red, what about yourself?
Well, aside from the idea of supporting important people and sharing my ideas, I would also like to hear more information and ideas from different people and try to integrate that with what I know.
Well, I think that it's a great start to kind of introducing a little bit about us and what the general feeling of the podcast project is. And I think it's a positive. I think a lot of us are here for positive reasons to grow with the show, and that excites me. I personally want to do the same thing and learn from other people and other perspectives, as it's hard to open up and find yourself vulnerable to new topics at times. Without feeling out of place or uncomfortable. So I think with that said, we're going to move in from our meeting grounds, the commons, to the armory section of today's podcast. And that will be, how can you affect the present to make a better future? Now, I think this question in and of itself has an interesting perspective to it, because it's directed towards the individual rather than how can society outright do something. It's more so positioned towards you, yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how can you affect the present to make a better future? Does anyone have any start to this topic that they like to introduce, or any sources by chance that people wanted to use?
Not in particular. I mean, what immediately sort of jumps out to me about that is it makes me think of, like, what are things you can do simply in your day to day? That's what it makes me think of. I mean, because that's something achievable that everybody can do. So, like, something that would jump out to me is just human interaction. Like, sometimes I feel like if we were to focus more on problem solving and compassion, maybe over time we'd be able to shift more towards being able to feel that way about everybody all the time. Less conflict, more cooperation. And that's something that you can do. You can go at every situation trying to find commonality and trying to find solutions.
I think that goes along with what I like to talk about, individual development.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what is individual development affecting when it comes to making a better future?
Well, it can allow you to have a better future, even if you are fake or telling yourself you're having a better future and you're not. You know what I'm saying? Like a stoic. But really, just developing yourself will help you have a better future, because it could be about perspective of the individual.
And if you're putting your best self forward into the world, that does help the future. Because, I mean, we've all heard this before. It's like, please help yourself before helping others. If the masks fall down in the plane, but because and that was something I had to learn the hard way, which is that before you can help others, you have to help yourself. And I think that's more important than people give credit for.
I would agree with that. And having that personal collaboration, those personal perspectives joint in and joint effort can be a powerful thing, especially when it comes to fighting isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel it as if religion has a big play in your personal perspectives to making the future better? Or do you think that ultimately it's more about things outside of your personal beliefs that should affect the world? Would you rather have everyone happy, or just a select happy in your ideal situations?
I think everybody should be on like the same page for development. Like, definitely religion could play a big part in it, because it becomes one with the person who takes on religion, because you're shaping your own beliefs in a certain way. I got a few things lined out, like a couple points, but I definitely think religion is another funnel to where that could be brought out upon. But the same as the library, college education, or some sort of philosophy that you study on. It's maybe not considered religion, like some writings of Confucius or something. I mean, people would say, "Oh, that's religion," but I don't know. I guess it depends on your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, because at the core of it, to me anyway, religion is believing in something and internalizing that belief. Whether that's a belief in science or religion doesn't matter so much as your own conviction in whatever you're talking about and whatever you believe in.
Yeah, like because like okay, so I know that a lot of people say that saints or Christians have like blind faith and they believe a book written by man or whatever, and but there's a little bit of stuff in there like for everybody, like the Proverbs, book of Proverbs by Solomon. It's just a book of wisdom. It might be skewed a little bit towards like fearing the Lord or something like that, but there's a lot of like little things in there. And like some of the things that Jesus said, like agree with Chad. He said, don't try to pull out the mote of somebody else's eye unless you have your own eye fixed, right? Like fix yourself first before you try to fix somebody else. So it's like there's a lot of stuff in there. It's not necessarily religion, but it's understanding, and that was like my first point that I wrote down with individual development is to and this is off of a Proverbs, is to always grow in understanding. With all you're getting, get understanding, and to me that shapes the way that you approach life in general, because how you understand something is going to affect how you behave.
Yeah, with Stoic beliefs, that's something I try to remind myself is it's really a fleeting thing. It's not like there's a magnet that's binding myself to that philosophy or that train of thought all the time. You have to really work towards having discipline to remind yourself these things and to make yourself, like, to draw yourself into that active state of mind. I wouldn't just say guarded, but it's almost like being guarded for the reality to come in and surprise you, because there's things in life that we all know we can't control, and we don't necessarily know when those things will happen. And so that's part of my draw personally towards being involved with philosophical things and the philosophical nature of life. I think it's a beautiful aspect to it. And it's great that we can individually come together and in understanding of these things. Red, did you have something you'd like to add?
Well, aside from understanding what's going on, first, an identification of what you have, that's very important. So you have to identify what you currently have and how would you be working on that. So you'll be able to absorb more and understand and what's going on or what's being added to everything that you do daily. You also have to be mindful and of the state you're at. Once you identify those, then you'll learn how to take more of what's being given to you, whether it's positive or negative, and how would you be giving your takes on that?
I actually really like the idea of mindfulness. And if I were to build on it, I'd say something that everybody could do that would help the future. And it's something that I think on all levels we all struggle with in some way, is just being open to new things, whether that's a new concept, maybe it's a new podcast that you're joining. It's like putting yourself out there and being open to something, I think is really valuable. And I think if more people did that, there would also be more cooperation. But I really like the overarching idea of mindfulness, or just being open. I like that.
I think that being open is huge. That it's one of the main things that people have to be aware with. And that if you're I understand it's hard for some people to be social, and that some people, they really, really struggle to be out there and I know I've got a friend in school and he wouldn't go to any parties, and I know it can be very difficult, but I've also kind of nudged him on, and it's really helped him. I feel like he's more socially aware. He's talking to more people, but it's also opened up his mind because he's been like shown these new ideas basically. Like he knows what other people are feeling during different times. I feel like that's a huge thing.
I think more people may need in the sense of a lot of people need a nudge, but they might not even realize it, because you gave him a nudge and you said that he's been, seeing improvement and really opening up more, or it's, I think, because that's always something that I've needed to try something new, is I generally need someone to give me a nudge. And so I think that is another good example of something that you can do in the present to affect the future. Be more willing to give people around you nudges in a direction you think would help them, and it could help them more than we think.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. And Carl has something he'd like to add to this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like mindfulness is like perfect. I mean, and this nudge is like what I think the conversation would give anybody listening in the podcast, because they might be thinking, oh, what about 501k and getting a career, going to college and all that stuff? But we're actually talking about mindfulness and helping one another. It's like, I think that a clean conscience, like if you do things that are acceptable, will enhance your mood to have that good like happiness. And then but then you can put away stuff that like affects you negatively, like try to get rid of the bitterness inside of you by like not being angry, even though you think that anger or something like that is a good release. But maybe if you just stop the habit, then you won't even naturally get it after a while, and then you like kind of grow in your spirit and have that. And this mindfulness will actually keep you like having a better future, because you don't grow up to be one of those grumpy old people, or like just kind of being mindful to develop your conscience, to have a good mood, and that actually allows you to help other people and kind of elevate in general.
Right. So I think what Carl just said is really, really good. Habits, they're huge. Like they can save someone. I know that big thing is like, right. I know David Goggins. I don't know if anyone here has heard of him before. Right. So I'll quickly explain what he said. He was in a very rough spot. He was abused when he was young. He got very overweight, but eventually just got into the habit of just going for a run, going for like a kilometer run, and then just building a little bit every month after month, just building. And he's now, then eventually he got into the Navy SEALs. He's trained up. He runs ultras. Well, kind of what the big race is in America, but it's like it's called Death Canyon or something like that, where you run for like 300 miles. And he ran it, and it's just tiny little habits that it might not be for physical activity, it might be for educational, of just going, right, I'm going to get into the habit of doing an hour or two study every single day, and just getting into the like just almost, what's the word, methodical, like for rhythm, like a rhythmic way of just methodical way of just like getting into the habit of, right, I'm going to do something that'll improve me, or like to just get into the habit of doing it once a day, even if it's for 5-10 minutes. And just building on that will really, 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 really help.
Yeah, I think that rolls perfectly into Red's next point here. Red, would you like to go over that?
Yeah, well, it's perfect that we have talked about mindfulness and habits, but the listeners might be asking, well, do you really know what does the future behold? Do we really know what's in the future? So why do we need to do all of this? Well, of course, we cannot really tell what's in the future, but it's for us to know and identify what are we targeting. Like, what will be your objectives? I would suggest for people who are confused on what to do, to set a specific goal or target or objective for the future and try to work on it, build on it. And well, we do not say that you'll get it right away by just following these steps and whatsoever, but knowing what your objective is and trying to identify what are the things that can help that objective or those objectives, that will help you to be able to identify what are the things that you need and you don't need, and how will you achieve that.
Yeah, being able to collectively survey what you're up against is important. I think this is a really good start to the dynamic of this discussion, especially on habits and mindfulness. Those are two strong observations to pull out of this. And mindfulness is definitely like the really tough one there. I try to keep positive on my mindset, but it slips through all the time where you're trying to work on a project or you're trying to fix a tech issue and it's like, like the timing, you have to be mindful that the timing is going to be bad in these situations, and learning to really bring the two in a harmonious nature together is tough.
Well, it doesn't need to be positive at all times,
That's true.
Let's be realistic here. A lot of things might happen that beyond our control, or things within our control that will turn out negatively. But it's the mindfulness of what you really want to do, what you really want to achieve, and being mindful of your actions and the resolutions that you have for those. How are you going to be able to resolve it? I guess that would help in the long run.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about goals, Red. It's like, if my goal is to be a surfer and just surf all day, like encounter that in California, and then you don't care if you work at a restaurant or whatever, and financially, but you can have a goal to be like rich and have what you want, and then endure like hardness of work and break your back for somebody for a while until you come out on top. And I think it's like your opinion on what, and then resolutions, like you said, like maybe you didn't meet your goal, but like you can resolve to be happy anyways. That I really think that, a better future, is just maybe the way you look at it, and goals and shaping yourself. Yeah. And as long as you have a positive outlook, then your future is going to be positive. But then when you start getting that stuff creeping in, and then you say, well, this is horrible. Like if you start looking at, where there's war, and then this is happening, and then you're dwelling on, things that happen in life, like maybe then you have a negative future. But yeah, like I was saying, and Liam was reaffirming, is that the habits that you have, they can creep up and become demons, because like your life, how you react, like off the split second, is based on habits in your own mind. Like if you have a habit of being angry, then you're gonna, or every time somebody talks about this subject, then you're just gonna shut off. But if you have like a habit of making sure you don't act a certain way, then that will leave you entirely. Like, and I'm speaking from experience, because like I used to cuss like a sailor and be everywhere, and like now I feel more calm and more able to handle like anything that approaches me.
No, I think that's an important mindset.
Yeah, no, exactly that, Chad.
I liked what you said. I liked what you said too about not dwelling, in the sense of that. I think that is another thing that is something really that a lot of people can really easily do in the present that will affect their futures if they're willing to not dwell on things and willing to let things go and willing to move on from things. Because I think there's a lot of people, and I mean myself included, on certain things of where it's like it's just hard to really let things go and move on in a positive way, move forward. It can be difficult.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Well, it can be affected by a lot of traumatic experience that we had, like things really going wrong. But once you build up on being mindful on how you would be reacting on a specific situation, well, I wouldn't say it's a reactive, but it's being proactive, because I'm trying to be positive as much as I can with everything that has happened in the past. Well, instead of just reacting on it right away, like when we were younger, we would tend to react because scientifically, teenagers or the younger ones have more of a thinking of reacting right away without thinking about it. But as we grow older, as we age, we are thinking more of how would I respond to this? How would I be reacting to this? Should I be reacting afterwards, or should I be counting 1 to 10 before I do something? Should I be thinking about the future or thinking about my real objectives here? So that, I guess, that what should we be building, trying to think about it before giving a response.
Now, I remember going from a reactive mindset to a proactive mindset when I joined the working world, because all of a sudden being reactive is a little more dangerous because you don't want to upset or offend or get fired or say something you'd regret, because the stakes are a little higher in the working world, or at least the working world I find myself in.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's part of the reason I get calloused with social anxiety, because it's hard to feel both approachable and like you can approach people in all situations. But building that confidence in situations like that, to be positive and to take a positive perspective, can also feel uncomfortable. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong to do, though.
Mm-hmm.
Moving forward is like definitely like what I got from like listening to my religious leader, Paul the Apostle. He says, forgetting all the things that he used to be, and putting the past behind him and always pressing forward towards the mark. And he's talking about running a race, and not running the race like you're panting at the air and you're not able to, you're running out of breath, but one that finishes that race. And so he's not being defeated, and he's forgetting like all the downfalls or whatever it was. And I guess what he was able to do that with the newness of life that he received. But I think that's real important, because when you stop moving forward, like your future is based on moving forward. As soon as you stop moving forward, then you become stuck in the present, and you want to move forward to have a future. And if you want to change your present, then you change your future. So it's like you can mold and shape your future, and that's part of like life. It's like a big old race, and it depends on where you want it to go. I think that was really cool. I didn't think about that. Moving forward, I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. No, and that's like, even just hearing this discussion organically start forming, it's really exciting. Like,
it's funny. Oh no, go ahead, Cameron. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. Go for it.
Nice. I wanted to almost build on the the race metaphor, because there's another aspect to that that I kind of like, which is because when you finish a race, you feel accomplishment, but you might feel accomplishment about the place you got in that race. But for me, because it's like I'm remembering back when I used to run track and field, it's like a huge part of the accomplishment is how far you've come and how far you made it and how difficult it was, but that you got here to the end anyway. And I think that's something to be said of, to look back on challenge and hardship and understand that, yes, it was challenging and it was hard, but I'm where I am now because of it.
Yeah, you're empowered by your capability.
Mm-hmm. I think I just liked how well that fit into the race metaphor.
No, I like it. I think that was a great tie-in, and the race metaphor is very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go for it, Rit.
Yeah, I like the race metaphor, but it boils down to some of the people thinking about thinking about having competition. Like people would be reacting because I am such in a competitive mindset that I should be overcoming everything, overcoming everyone, and bypassing everyone. That's included. But basically, what I want to think about it is just a competition against yourself and not against everybody else. So you would be competing against your old self, your former self, rather than competing against somebody like your sister or your brother or your cousin or a coworker. Other than being in competition with them, it's just competing against yourself, against your former self. And then working on that, building on that, so you can integrate yourself to the others or to the society that you have.
No, the idea of competitive thinking does make me think of something too that we can tie into the original point, or the original topic, which is that I think that sort of shirking or trying to move away from a overarching competitive mindset, especially in interpersonal relation, is something that you can do in your present that will affect the future. I think moving away from a competitive mindset would help to facilitate that kind of growth that we want for the future, and that kind of cooperation. Because I don't really, and it's hard to shirk that because we live in or at least in the United States, it's a capitalist thing. So, and it's very ingrained, that competitive mindset is very ingrained in a lot of people's brains.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. And it's sort of odd to really watch it. I mean, especially like in my place of work, because I'm not very competitive at work, because I like to just show up and do my job and get paid for it. That's kind of my MO. But there's other people that are way more competitive than I am, and that can still use it to their advantage. But I still don't really think it has as much of a place as we think it, as a lot of people think it should.
I think it's natural to have competitive thought processes, but it doesn't have to be out of lack of collaboration.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be fueled by isolation, because I've definitely been in group project situations where I've wanted to isolate. I want to just go take my measurements and dial in my things myself. Mainly, like, looking back at it, I think it's a control thing. Not because I'm trying to do it intentionally to ruin people's day in a project, but because the way my mind works, I want to make sure my numbers are correctly in line, and it's more of like an OCD kind of thing, where it just drives me nuts when it feels like maybe I'm out of line or I'm out of step rhythmically. And it's perfectionist behavior, I think, is a better way of framing it. And I've had to definitely slack off of that over time, because operating at a perfectionist output is just silly.
It's tiring.
Like, it's exhaustive. Yeah, it's very mentally exhaustive. And there's some moments in time where you just need to forgive yourself and understand you're not at 100%. You need to take sleep. You know, you're not going to get all these things done. And that's okay too. That's why it shouldn't be a race, right? Because we're all biologically different. We're all philosophically different. We have different baselines and starts to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Liam, do you have any points?
I have mixed point of views about competitive thinking. And first of all, I'm going to apologize in case I hurt someone's feelings in advance. It's not on purpose. I mean it from a warm place in my heart, not in an aggressive way. So I think a competitive atmosphere can do a lot of good to some people. Like if we look at the space race, we advanced so much in technology because of the space race. Like between Russia and America, it just advanced so much. We got lots of technology. But then in the same way, we can see a competitive atmosphere hurt relationships between people. Like we can see the space race hurt relationships between Russia and America, and we can still see that ripple effect there today. Like the way NATO has almost boxed in Russia, and Russia has decided to lash out on Ukraine, or a million other reasons, like taxes on oil from Russia and stuff like that. But I think that competitive atmosphere is a good idea, but as long as you take it with a grain of salt, that you realize, right, this can't just get in between our relationship. I have to, like, it does a lot of good to you, but in the same way, you have to take a step back and realize, wait a minute, is this going to affect someone else?
Yeah, that's actually a fantastic point.
Yeah, no, that is a great point, and I think that steps us towards tangent forest a little bit, and I'm going to step towards it more because I think it's interesting that you put the economy based to that perspective, and it really shows that how much does an assertive competitive economy, like what's the threshold that takes that from a base point of just trying to give people enough to support their families and create a stable environment to work and gather resource, so to speak, versus just a nationalistic prospect. Almost like you could view colonialism as a nationalistic prospect. There's a bunch of countries that were out to prospect land, prospect resources in territories that weren't necessarily undisputed. You know, that mindset is something that we are very capable of having. Societies have proven. So why wouldn't that be considered within the modern social aspect of things? I think that's a very interesting point that could be elaborated on, especially when it comes to tackling utopias and future societies such as Saudi Arabia's The Line project. I don't know. That thing looks crazy though.
I need to look that up. That sounds...
Dude, have you never heard of The Line?
I haven't heard about it yet.
Mental.
Wow. You know what? For the people that don't know too, I'm gonna enlighten you, because The Line project is one of the biggest projects in human history being worked on.
What, it's like a city or something? Is it a city?
It's going to accommodate 9 million people in a footprint of just 34 square kilometers. Wow. And it's going to be a line. Like, we'll see. But conceptually, it's supposed to have like mirrors on both sides too.
To make it feel bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to have like pools so you can take like canal rides through, or drone services. Like there's a whole conceptual idea behind that, but they're putting tons of money towards these projects to build kind of a tourist-based economy. But I mean, we're talking trillions of dollars. So when it comes to scalability, things like that just aren't going to happen in rural areas and in smaller country towns. Like, not everyone's going to be happy about just being stuck into a line city. So things like that are very obscure, you know.
Yeah.
But it still goes to show the power behind the economy and business. Man, that was a tangent. Okay. I didn't know I'd do it first, but I blame Outcast. Outcast got us started. Okay. He was quiet, but he was sulking in this little economic point.
Scheming in the background.
No, it makes a lot of sense of that. It's like economic competition on a larger scale does drive business and new ideas, and it really does drive that. And competition is what has built almost everything that humans have. I mean, competing against each other. I just sort of feel like at a certain point, we'd have to look at where we are and think about where that mindset's actually taking us.
Yeah, definitely.
But it has to be said that competition has gotten us very far. And it is interesting to think about that. I haven't ever thought about it like that, honestly. It's interesting.
Wartime's one of the best examples of that, unfortunately. War brings innovation. And
like World War One. Oh, man. World War One could be its own topic. I'm a big into that.
Oh, same here.
Agreed.
World War II.
Well, we're going to keep the world wars out of this one. Because that one's a rabbit hole sucker, dude. Don't get Outcast and I started.
No, if we had a historical topic, that would be a good one. That would be a great
we'll
one.
We'll get there. But Carl, what did you have about competitive versus comparison?
Well, I think that we don't want to confuse the wording here because running the race, it doesn't have to be. I mean, it's competition and it's good, and I like that idea about competition. But I was more focusing on competition is okay, but it's when you start comparing yourself to another person. Like, everybody is an individual, and you could take somebody from like the lowest school or whatever and compare them to somebody with the highest school grade, but then you're gonna start like problems like that bring about racism, hatred, and this indifference. Like, I used to do electrical wiring in a trade, and you don't want to compare yourself to the journeyman. Well, but so if you're both running a race to wire the house, you know what I'm saying, you're working together, one person could be faster than the other. But if the journeyman starts looking at the helper and starts comparing himself to the helper and saying, you're just too slow, you're never going to make it to the pros, you know, it's going to be a problem. And it's like a whole can of worms, because then people won't even try to run the race because they're like, I'll never be as good. You know, I'm not going to try to be a electrical engineer because only smart people go to school, you know, and stuff like that. And I think really comparing is like a little bit of a different topic than being competitive, because we all want to be on that same race to good, and we're all trying to be first in our own way. And if you look at ourselves individually, coming from a different background, and like we were talking about, all those things that you look back that you overcome and you achieved over, make you feel better about yourself. Like, look where I came from, look what I accomplished. You get to focus on that more instead of comparing yourself, because you can see a whole bunch of small accomplishments become big in your own eyes, while somebody else looking at you can be envious and say, that's nothing, man, I came from over here. And then it's like, really bad, you know. So comparing yourself to other people, I don't think it's profitable, I mean, at all.
I think it's easier to do it by accident too. without
Yeah.
necessarily even meaning to.
No, and I would say like mentally constricting someone. That's another way I would visualize that. Like you're mentally constricting them from their potential threshold of growth if you're denying them a positive attitude to a degree, a fresh perspective. Like everyone should have a chance to take in a subject at their own discretion, in my opinion. Like religion, that's a perfect example. Shouldn't just hate religion because the person next to you does. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, that gets interesting when I think about how isolated things can get. Like growing up in a high school that was very left-leaning, mentalities like that were more common. Of that, it's like, oh well, I just don't like that because everyone else in my class doesn't really like it. You're comparing your own opinion and going with a group mentality rather than really forming your own. But that's sort of off topic, though.
I know, but it definitely has to do with social awareness, which is something I think Red was wanting to touch on.
Yeah.
Oh, well, hearing about that and going back to the discussion about the economy and things that are happening, well, I guess it's also important for us because, our daily goal is how can we last through the day, or how can we finish the day, things like that. But we are really so much thinking about the things that we should do instead of the things that are coming to us. So we should be, I think that's great that a lot of people are aware of the social issues, are aware of the things that are happening around us. But with that, we can integrate what we are doing in our own little ways. Like, it's not that you have to know a lot about what's going on in the upcoming election or in the things that are going to be happening. It's good that you know something about it objectively, and getting information objectively instead of just doing your own thing. You don't have any agenda, or you don't have any targets at all.
I think this is a very interesting aspect when you add all these things we just went over together, because it's kind of something I wanted to touch back on Carl's point between comparison and competitive discussion, especially when it pertains to the workforce, because it all plays together. We know things aren't black and white. There's a lot of mixed dynamics, so to say, in social settings that it may take time to process, or for them to adhere to, or for yourself to adhere to. There's just a lot of dynamics, and it might be best to bring social awareness into aspect when you are talking about this kind of subject, because as Chad stated before, some people need that boost and some people need that nudge. And I've had friends in the past where they're mentally struggling. I nudged them towards philosophy, and in the moment they'll be like, that's cool, and that's that seems helpful. But then they'll actually read it and look into it, and they're like, wow, if I take the time to kind of set these aspects to my life efforts, and I see a degree of improvement in my attitude. It's like, okay, that's a positive push, even though you may in the moment feel like a nitpick or nagging that person. Sometimes being assertive is what that person needs if they're negligent about their own self-perspective. Because I know it's easy to form negative boundaries, so to speak. I've never called it that, but that's an interesting way of putting it.
That is a good way to put it.
Like you build negative boundaries that you're allowing yourself to be negative with. but trying to minimize your negative boundaries and improve your positive ones, or even your challenges. Put your negatives towards your challenges and try to approach your challenge aspects to provide growth, because you don't grow unless you're feeling uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's why it's so helpful, Cameron, because you gave me a nudge to join this podcast, and I'm really happy to be here. So
I gave everyone a nudge. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's just you. It's me too, dude.
Yeah.
Podcasting is scary. It's hard
Yeah.
to know what to say and how you're gonna write things. It's
And that just as good as a wink to a blind bat, eh?
well, what I can say is I think for my mentality of before going in with just the free form rather than having a visual map, I feel like the map helps me mentally understand the conversation, the flow
The map
of
is
where
great
we should be
backbone.
heading. I love it. I
Yeah.
really love where it's helping the show build towards. And I think it'll be proven when we have more of our members here. But right now with the small setting, it's great. I think
Yep.
no, I just think it's a positive to have you guys commenting between each other's points. And this so far has been allowing for enough flow to be understandable. Does anyone have any points that they'd like to bring up with the discussion so far? I can read over the original question if we'd like to have a refresh real fast.
I don't know. Maybe we can summarize
Yeah, I think
after
we
you read
did.
the question.
I wanted to build on something that we passed on earlier on.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about this. Unless this is something we can reflect back to, but if you'd like to say it now, go for it.
I think the whole idea of setting goals for the future is a huge part of like helping ourselves and other people. But there's one thing we have to do, and we have to make sure that these are achievable, and not say I'm going to make €1 million in the next year. And yeah, this might be achievable, but you have to kind of be able, like, actually, I'm going to use a different metaphor because that is achievable for most people. No, for some people, like running a marathon, you're not going to say, right, I've just learned to walk, I'm going to go run 60 miles now. Like, that's physically not achievable if you say, I'm going to give myself a month for this. But you have to make sure that you give yourself like a time stamp of like, right, I'm going within a year I won't be able to run 20 miles, and then say, I mean, it can be achievable as long as you work on it. But you have to make sure that your targets and your vision for the future is achievable, and you're not going to be, when that time passes and you look back and you go, oh God, I didn't make that you're not actually going to end up hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, oh God, I missed that. I'm not doing very well. It's like, no, you didn't exactly do that. You just didn't make it achievable for yourself. So you have to make sure when you're setting targets that it's achievable.
No, I have my own like personal experience with that, which is that when I moved from Portland to Central Oregon, and I had this whole big like, oh, I'm gonna buy a house, I'm gonna do this, and I had all this stuff planned out. I was living in a car at the time, trying to save money, and then which realistically it was an unachievable goal, the goal that I set for myself, and so then as you continue to not reach it, you feel more and more defeated, and it makes even just setting any goals really difficult after you feel defeated. Whereas if you set yourself achievable goals, you get to feel that accomplishment periodically, and it helps you keep moving forward.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
So no, no, I really like that. I really like that point, Liam.
Yeah, that's well framed. No, I'm glad you touched back on that. And that actually leads us into our next points here, which will be in the breakpoint heights. So the point of breakpoint heights is to kind of reflect on our biggest points and our biggest takeaways as a collective from this discussion. So for me, myself, I view that mindfulness it's probably the biggest takeaway I have, the height of this discussion. You know, if you're not mindful with both yourself and others around you, then the potential for disaster or ruin to your plans is hard to occur. You know, having like Outcast touched on, setting realistic goals, that's going to determine how much you put on yourself, how much you desire from yourself. Because we're not machines, you know, we can input and output things, but we need to have pace. And so being mindful of those things and considerate about yourself and your self-pace, self-balance is important. Would anyone like to talk on their height experience for this discussion?
Well, yeah, but before that, let me go back to the goal setting point that they were talking about ago. Well, actually, that is a bigger topic. I guess that would be a good topic in the next episodes. How to set your goals or goal setting,
and keeping on track
because
with said goal.
Yeah.
It's hard for me.
Yep. So that can be a good topic in the future. But it's good that we touch on that. These are the highlights that I've got so far. As Cameron mentioned, identifying where you stand or the mindfulness, and then setting targets or knowing your objectives, then being proactive in carrying out the process and doing things using growth mindset.
I kind of, agree with the goals you set, and that affects your conscience, and that's it. The individual development that I was kind of just talking about, as opposed to like 501k plans and retirement, and making sure that you have money, because money, answers a lot of things, but the mood that you have is affected. Like Chad was saying, his mood was, with that goal not being attainable, was really affected, and that's all like based on your conscience, and like it's based on your outlook. I think that's what I think the future is, based on your outlook, and all these things can affect our outlook.
Oh no, do we have an invader?
Yes, he was misbehaving, so I had to get after him. But now he's here.
What's your dog's name?
Wilson. Come here, Wilson. Come on, right here. He's shy. He's
Yep,
like literally walking away.
Oh man.
No, you guys will get to see him again. He's great.
That's funny.
Yeah. No, he was like eating a napkin, and I don't know where he got it from, so I had to yell at him.
Oh, dogs.
No, he's
no,
hilarious.
that's great. That's great, though, Carl, and
Mhm.
thank you for making those reiterations. Outcast and Chad, are there any points you'd like to gather before that haven't been touched on before we kind of go to our diving depths?
I really think it's interesting that a lot of us really gravitated towards things that you can do interpersonally in your present to affect both your future and other people's. I really liked that, or that's really interesting that that's where a lot of us went to.
Yeah, rather than like physical things like giving the homeless food, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, but like overall, the longevity of things,
Mhm.
how much you're going to affect. Like, I think interpersonal's definitely the more long-term plan of action.
Because if you're more interpersonally squared away, you have more mental bandwidth to be able to make a difference and to be able to affect people in a positive way when you yourself are squared away and secure. I think it's important.
Absolutely. Outcast, do you have anything you'd like to touch on?
I think that it's huge that everyone's kind of opened up and given personal experiences. It kind of feels like this might connect with some people, and people might take this on board and it'll just help out. And the fact that we've actually done this will help out, hopefully, other people, and that they'll take this on board and make the world just generally a better place.
That's a great point to jump off into diving depths with. That was beautifully put, Outcast. And thank you guys for sharing up to this point with the discussion. Diving depths is more inclined on, more focused on bringing our points together and kind of seeing what, for us personally, we're going to take out and kind of take to the future with down our next journeys. Because I'll tell you, for one, again, I think the most important one for me is being mindful of not being too proud of my culture, especially, knowing that there can be different perspectives out there and different experiences that have just as much weight to them, and trying to always keep an open mindset on things that I may not understand in moments is a very important thing to me that I want to try and work on.
Well, a few things that really spoke to me are I really liked the talk about goal setting, because I think that's something I need to do in my life to affect my future and to be helpful. And then also talking about comparative behavior sort of also opened my eyes to the fact that I'm doing that without even realizing or meaning to. And I think setting realistic goals and trying to be less comparative will be able to help me. There you go.
Yeah, and I like the idea that we actually mentioned that our discussion is a little different than what expected, like, because the future, like, could be like, global warming is going to get rid of our polar ice caps, are we going to run out of fossil fuels? Are we going to have electric cars? What we can do is to better the future would be buy an electrical car or something like that. But to me, that's like on a scale of like the election or whatever. You don't know who's going to be a president. You can almost not help who's going to be the president, even though people like to say your vote counts, but does it really? And does our vote count? Like, do our deeds really help the future?
Oh man, Carl's going into tangent. He's running in.
Yeah, like
that's a Concord for Americans. It's like
going straight for conspiracy gardens, man.
Like exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, when I was thinking of this topic, I was like, really, like, can we affect the future or not? I mean, like, come on now. My biggest thing is like, with you individually, like, you can affect the future no matter how bleak it is. Like, if the sun is causing boils on everybody's skin and the end times are here, like, your future is different than everybody else's depending on your perspective. Like, that's why I wanted to talk about that in my personal view, because you could say my future is good because of my job, but then you're focusing on what can you do to make a better future. Go to college, get an education, so you can get a better job. But then when the bigger things pop up, like, how does your job affect other people? Like, if I'm a geologist and I'm working in the oil industry, is that like hurting other people's opinions on what's good for this earth and all that stuff? And it's like, can you really affect the earth? Is that the future that we're worried about? I mean, it just becomes a big thing. Like, can you affect the future? That would be a good question to give the podcast.
Whether it's even realistically possible.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I want you to know too, I think Chad can agree, if there's sun out there producing boils, HVAC's still working. They'd still be like, "No, you're done.
Yeah,
get in there.
Oh my
That's
God.
okay. It'll be cool eventually."
Yeah. Oh my goodness, dude.
Oh man, I hope that would never happen, but you never know. You never know.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
In our
Cooling
time.
it's really funny. No matter which way the climate goes, heating or cooling is going to be really important. So I'm glad Cameron's on the ground floor with me.
Yeah. Yeah, we're ready for the next ice age, baby.
Yep. We just need to survive the winter first, which is going to be a challenge.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh my God.
But that was my little foot in the tangent for a store.
Mhm.
No, I think that leaves Outcast and Red on their diving points.
Well, being mindful, I know some would be saying that they are already practicing that. We may not be perfecting that, but everybody, everybody's got it. You got it. So, yep, just continue on what you are doing good. And I thought of being more proactive and carrying the growth mindset as I go along.
Yeah. I'm sorry that it took me so long to react there. Because I was rereading Diving Depths to make sure I was talking about the right thing and not going off the wrong route. But
no, I understand.
I think that if people just just think about their actions and not just jump in head first, and that they build good habits. And if you are building good habits already, great, keep that up. And if there's someone struggling, just make sure you're there for them. Make sure that if they need an extra bit of help, you can give them the extra bit of help. But if you can't, make sure if you can't give someone that help, make sure you get someone else to help them, because it might bring you down if you're not ready to help them, and you might not be ready for that. But make sure that you're ready to just support someone in their time of need.
Yeah, I have one more. Well, if you're not sure where to start or when to start, well, where to start is within yourself, and when to start is now. Take that step.
Yeah, that's a great place to leave the Diving Depths and go into the Reflections Retreat. Kind of reflect on today's discussion overall, just the interactions we had between each other, and what we think our personal highlights are. Maybe looking forward into the next episodes, it looks like we had a few topics suggested, and that's something I wanted to highlight. I think the collaboration's great. It looks like people feel engaged, and that makes me want to engage. And I'm very excited to see what the group discovers together, and when we get our other members in here, how they'll enjoy the discussion with us.
No, I feel the same way. I was nervous, but I was super happy once we really started to get going and really talking. I thought we had good flow and we made good points, and it felt good to be a part of that. It really did feel good.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chad. It did feel good. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite thing about podcasting, is getting in that flow state of thought with others.
Well, and it's also just nice because we all had different perspectives, but we all were able to give good ideas. And I really do think, and it's like I was able to take something from what you guys had to say, and that's really valuable. I really do think it is.
I feel like I know I have learned something today from other people, and it's kind of opened me up to different ideas, thinking, oh Jesus, yeah, never thought of that before, and I need to maybe think about this more when I make a decision on something, about how this can affect people in a different way.
Yeah.
But I really think, especially what you said, Carol, that really, really, it opened my mind up completely. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, Jesus, I never thought of that before.
Growing up, there's one thing that gave me a perspective on what a better future would be. When I was really small, the first song I heard on the radio was "Lean on Me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend." And that was like what? That's not what anybody's doing right now, and that would be a better future, if everybody can individually chip into that.
It's beautifully put, Carl.
No, really. I think that's sort of what we were all feeling when we would go to that space of where you should figure yourself out interpersonally so that you can let other people lean on you and give people those nudges that they need. And I just think it's important that we all go at it with that attitude that was put in that song. It's really true.
Yeah, like I don't know, musicians put it best. I think they really, like, as Carl said, just like lyrics that you think about it and go like, wow, no one's thinking about that, no one's doing anything about that at the moment. Like, I know there's those of songs. I know that, I don't know if anyone has heard of Johnny Cash. Has heard his song Hurt.
Yeah,
it's really, really good. It's really like, it just like about his experiences of life and how shit and messy it can be. Like, excuse my language there, but I think that's the word that we have to use there, just to show how grimy and dirty life can be. But like, musicians, as I say, just put it into words that we can't even think of.
Yeah, that's why music in and of itself is so profound. I mean, that's its own rabbit hole. We could have a whole podcast about just the gravity of musical lyrics and what it can mean to different people. So that would be a fun one.
No, I'm collectively impressed with how well today went.
Right, Cameron? We pulled it off. We pulled it
off somehow, man. I was, a lot of it's bluffing at first because you really don't know how discussions are going to go with new groups. But no, I think we found a state of understanding between each other that can be reflected in a positive aspect for the show. And I think this was a great first episode, first adventure we went on, and I can't wait to get back into the next one in 2 weeks here, guys.
Yep,
it's on my calendar.
Heck yeah. No, I love it. And is there anything else anyone wants to say before we close out?
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
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 I can't wait to keep trekking with you guys, and this has been an intellectual adventure. Thank you guys, and until next episode.
Nice. And a big thank you to Cameron.
Yeah, thanks.
No. No. I'm cutting that.